Washington Nationals are sitting high atop the NL East standings, but the Mets are lurking right behind them. They go head-to-head this weekend. The pregame Saturday is at 6 Eastern and Sunday at 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio.
Get ready to embrace debate. First Take starts now.
Hello, hope you all had a wonderful weekend. It is Monday. Welcome into First Take. Both the guys are in the house this morning. Lucky us.
Shocking.
Skip Bayless, Stephen A. Smith,
I'll shake your hand for being in Bristol, Connecticut. Thank you very much.
You should be shaking my hand, period.
Period.
You better stop there and not say, hello, how are you?
Hello. Appreciate you being here as well. It was fantastic.
All right.
A lot to get into. Ready, gentlemen?
Absolutely.
Coming up,
ready.
Floyd Mayweather could have an opponent in his next fight this September, but is he the right choice? Plus, Big Ben wants the Steelers to put up 30 on their opponents this season, but can they? Don't miss that. Skip needs some water. But first, NFL officials will be keeping closer tabs on football inflation this season, as first reported by Fox Sports pregame. Pressure readings will now be documented, and there will be random halftime and postgame checks. The new procedures come in the wake of accusations of ball tampering by the Patriots in the AFC Championship game. The deflate allegations led to discipline against the team and Tom Brady. Brady is awaiting a decision from the NFL on the June 23rd appeal of his 4-game suspension. Now, gentlemen, the
advantage, Tom Brady. Allow me to explain.
Go ahead.
Obviously, the National Football League had no choice but to implement some sort of new system whereby it would regulate and monitor and crack down on and police, if you will, the air pressure of the footballs after all the disgrace, quote unquote, that was Deflategate. Stephen A. Smith, the NFL looks so bad here. It's now damned if it does and damned if it doesn't. Now that it does, it is basically admitting that, well, big picture, yeah, we always crack down on the K balls, as in kicker balls. We monitored those closely. I've talked about how Jay Feely has told me many stories about how they get rejected off and they come back to him, the ball boys bring them back. They won't accept this. Okay, we'll do that, do this, do that. But with the quarterback's balls, as we found out soon after the AFC Championship game, monitoring those balls has always been, at best or worst, lax. It's been whatever. It's been Scout's honor. It's been, I was shocked to find out, quarterbacks get the ball back a couple hours before the game, all their balls that they had prepared through the week, and they could pretty much keep them in possession of their possession until kickoff, right? Isn't that what we learned? Who are you texting?
I'm not texting anybody. I'm looking at the stuff that they sent us.
Oh, okay.
That's right. I wouldn't do that.
So you're doing last-minute prep here.
No.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no. I'm listening to your points.
I'm
thinking about my points I want to make.
Well, you better be.
That's right.
So my point here is that after this wink-wink that you had with the quarterback's balls, now that you put a system in place, if by chance Tom Brady has been suspended for 4 games, as we know right now, if he does take this to a court of law, what would a judge say about all this? Wouldn't a judge sit back and say, now, wait a second, you're just now putting in rules that are going to monitor the air pressure in the footballs? So before you really didn't have any rules for the quarterbacks. Am I right about this? So apparently the judge would say, in my opinion, NFL, you didn't think it was that big a deal in the first place. You've never thought it was that big a deal at all, okay?
Never
all right, but the point is, the judge would say, boy, NFL, you look shamefully bad here. And wait a second now, you are suspending your star quarterback, your best quarterback in the league, the one who just won the Super Bowl, 4 games over this. If, in fact, let's say the suspension gets upheld, what do you think the judge would rule on that? First of all, he or she would rule injunction time. Oh, you can play first game until we sort through all this.
Gotcha.
And I believe the deeper you sort through it, the more you would find that the NFL is just as at fault as Tom Brady is, quote unquote, as at fault. Because no one delivered a stern message to Tom Brady over all the many years that he's played for the New England Patriots that this was that big a deal. All he's saying is, I told our ball boys to inflate to the lower end of regulation. Was it right there or right there? I don't know. Tom Brady didn't know. I believe as he says in his heart of heart, he doesn't know. I believe him when he says that, because this is my proof. You're now putting in a system for the first time in 2015 to actually crack down on regulation of quarterbacks' balls before the game. And let me add one last little caveat to
Go
this.
ahead.
This is also the league whose popularity is fueled by sensational passing touchdown yardage, right? Those big pass plays. So wouldn't the league maybe feel it was a little self-defeating to crack down too hard on the inflation, deflation of the footballs? Aren't they as much to blame as, quote-unquote, Tom Brady is here? That's what this screams to me.
Skip Bayless, if you recall, Ray Rice was suspended for 2 games. Then in the aftermath of that, once the video came out, the NFL took some heavy hits, as you well know, working for the NFL Network at the time. And all of a sudden, they revisited matters. And even though they revisited matters and ultimately modified their position and elevated the level of suspensions as it pertained to Ray Rice, brought the hammer down on Greg Hardy, et cetera, yes, it was appealed. And everybody wants to make a big deal about what was captured in court by the NFL Players Association and how they beat Roger Goodell and they beat the NFL. Well, did those brothers miss games? I believe that they did. And at the end of the day, the NFL accomplished its goal in terms of getting them away. When you get into the technical minutia of this whole deal with Deflategate, Skip Bayless, first of all, you're absolutely right. I've always felt it was much ado about nothing. I can understand and comprehend how you would surmise that because the NFL has gone about the business of implementing these new rules, it's an indictment against them, because basically they're acknowledging that they didn't necessarily hand you, Skip Bayless. The reason why I'm drawing that correlation, although one has nothing to do with the other.
Like absolutely nothing.
I'm talking about in terms of Tom Brady and Ray Rice, because two different things. It's like Tom Brady, Greg Hardy, 2 different things. What it does have something to do with, where the common denominator comes in, is the NFL deciding to implement rules and regulations at its discretion. Why? Because they have the right to do so. One means nothing to the other. The fact that you've got a 4-game suspension that has been handed down by Roger Goodell, he's the one who heard the appeal. And even though you buy time to negotiate, to modify your position, to work with somebody so you can lessen the suspension or whatever the case may be, I sincerely doubt that it's going to equal a point where Tom Brady's not going to miss any games. Because, again, as uncomfortable, as annoying as it is to you, the NFL's position, technically, theoretically, what they wrote down on paper via Troy Vincent and others was that we didn't believe in managers and all of this other stuff, who did what he gave approval to, tacit or otherwise, what role Bill Belichick did or did not play in it, and all of this other stuff. But in the end, what the NFL can legally and legitimately hang its hat on is that they believe he wasn't cooperating as much as he should have. And as a result, I have the right as the commissioner, under the best image of the league, to make sure I bring some sort of hammer down on him to make sure I don't encourage others to think that they can get away with doing the same. So when you say advantage Tom Brady, advantage what? You can go to court all day and say, I didn't know anything about it. What you can't dispute is the NFL's interpretation as to how cooperative you were. So to me, this is much ado about nothing. So what? You got a new rule that's been implemented. So what? Now we understand that, 10 minutes before the game, the referees are going to have it up until that moment, et cetera, et cetera. We get all of that. We've seen the rules. Molly read them off. We got it. It's much ado about nothing, because it does not in any way impugn nor diminish the power that was given to Roger Goodell by the commissioner and thereby validated through collective bargaining negotiations. You ain't getting around this part of it all. You would if they said he's responsible for the deflated footballs. But if they're not saying that, and they're pointing to his behavior, and their interpretation of his cooperation, that's an entirely different matter.
Okay, it would be. But if you do go to court, which I believe Tom Brady will, depending on the reduction. Now, if it gets reduced to 0, we'll have a different story. I don't think that's going to happen. You don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think what's going to happen, Skip. I'm sorry.
It'll get every game will be dismissed.
Okay.
Like it'll get down to 0 games.
No, I don't believe that's going to happen.
Okay.
I don't believe that's going to happen.
So I believe even if it's one game, Tom Brady will go to court and he will immediately get an injunction. And I believe ultimately he will prevail in court because we're in an extremely different area than domestic violence. We're in an area that was never, ever, it comes off that the NFL never took this area of policing seriously at all. It comes off that, we kind of left them to their own devices here. It was Scout's honor on the balls. So then you're going to punish a quarterback for 4 games for something that you didn't police at all?
But you're using the words came across. I don't think that's accurate. I think it's clear that the NFL didn't take this as seriously as they should have. I think it's clear that there was a dereliction of duty on their part. There's no dispute there. And if their argument, again, was the deflated footballs, it buffers your point. My point is, how do you get around, tell me, Skip, educate me on this, how do you get around a boss's interpretation of you being deemed uncooperative? I don't understand that. That's what I need somebody to highlight for me. Because if he can't, I specifically said no. I would not have given you my cell phone. I would have given. But Ted Wells, in fairness, listen.
This is silliness.
Hold on,
what you're about to say.
Wait a minute. It says you say silliness, but Skip, step back for a second. All I'm saying to you is we're contemplating and surmising, Molly and Skip, what Tom Brady may or may not have said, not just to the investigators, but in the appeals process this past June 23rd. Sure. We know what Ted Wells said because not only did he put it in his report, he went on the air in the immediate aftermath of that diatribe that Tom Brady's attorneys threw in his direction, went on the air and stated his position. He said, quote, I won't take your cell phone. He said, quote, I won't even look through your cell phone. I am asking you to show me the text messages you sent to Patriots personnel specifically in regards to this matter, and I would take your word for it. We don't have to leave this office. Show them to me. This is an investigation.
I haven't heard Tom Brady's response to that
wait a minute. But what I'm saying to you is the time has I'm not leaving. I'm not taking the cell phone away. I am asking you to simply show me what correspondence you had with Patriots personnel in regards to this investigation. And Tom Brady refused. With his lawyer present, in attendance, Ted Wells said that they refused. That's not silly.
What would it prove to you if I selected 2 of my text messages and sent them to you and said, this is it, this is all I got?
And I'm saying,
they said nothing.
And I'm asking you to be fair-minded enough to recognize that ain't the question. The question is, well, how believable? That's not the point. The man was sent by the NFL, paid $5 million to conduct this investigation. You know he's there in an official capacity to you and communicate with you directly. He made a specific request, and you shoved him aside like it was nothing. I'm saying that cannot be ignored. That can easily be interpreted as uncooperative. Would I give somebody my cell phone? Hell no. Skip, you're absolutely right. I'm not giving up my cell phone.
For the record, I would. Right now, you can have mine right now. You can look all through it all you want.
I'll be the first.
I don't care.
I'll be the first to admit to you, I ain't doing that.
Okay.
I'm not.
Just for the record.
There are things on my cell phone that are just for me and whoever I'm communicating with. But the point that I'm trying to make to you is that's the way it's going to be. Okay. But if you asked me to show you specific emails in regards to correspondence, if ESPN comes to me and says you got your own private cell phone, but there's an investigation going on, we need to see, I'm going to honor that for my bosses. Now, you can't see my personal correspondence. Ain't none of your business. But you can see that.
I don't know what that would prove. But bottom line, will you agree with me that, in effect, the NFL is admitting publicly with these new rules that it did not closely monitor the quarterback's footballs leading up to game time?
I guess so, Skip, because, okay, I'll give you a yes on that because But that's been their MO.
Okay.
And I'm just saying to you,
didn't Ted Wells admit in his gauge, and then there was another gauge, and he said, well, I don't know about the other gauge. And one gauge showed that the balls were, quote unquote, legally inflated. Remember that part?
Right.
That's part of the investigation that he did.
Which is why I continue to say to you, anything pertaining to the issue of Deflategate itself, meaning deflated football,
Yep.
Tom Brady has a strong enough case.
He does.
Because of the issue of reasonable doubt favoring him. He has a strong enough case to have the suspension completely eradicated based on the reports.
Okay.
What he cannot wiggle his way around is the fact that he was labeled uncooperative, and that is enough justification for the commissioner of the National Football League to say your behind is going to sit out at least a couple of games, because we ain't going to have dudes following you thinking that they can emulate the behavior of DeMaurice Smith, the executive director for the Players Association, who, by the way, he doesn't work for Roger Goodell, doesn't work under Roger Goodell. He doesn't have to be cooperative. He's actually a combatant, but in the end, he has the right to be that way. The players do not.
Okay.
Period.
I say none of that will stand up in court ultimately. We'll see.
Okay. We'll see if he misses games.
More to come on this, and we'll continue to get into it. But how about we leave Brady off the field, and in this next topic, we discuss him on the field. Bill Barnwell of Grantland.com compiled a list of the NFL's top 100 players, where players are evaluated by a combination of past performance and expected aging injury curves. Now, relative positional values from team spending in contracts are not factored here. So here's the list of the top 100 players. Number 1, Aaron. Do you have any problems with this list?
Stephen A. Smith, obviously I have one huge problem with this list, because very clearly to me, number 4 should be number 1. Let's talk about money time. Let's talk about what I always talk about. Clutch gene. Can you do it when it really, really, really matters in the postseason? Forgive me for dredging up these stats again, but I have no choice now. So ranking number 1 on Mr. Barnwell's list is Aaron Rodgers, your man, who since winning his one and only Super Bowl, seems like 12, 15 years ago, is 2-4 in the postseason since that Super Bowl. And it was very close that he nearly fell to 1-4 against my Dallas Cowboys, because we all know that was a catch. Wish we could talk about that more this show, but we're not going to. Aaron Rodgers' QBR in the NFC Championship game at Seattle was 37 last year. 37. That is abysmal by his standards. Now we go to number 2 on that list. Andrew Luck in the postseason is 3-3. In his last playoff game, albeit at Foxborough against Tom Brady, his QBR was an even more abysmal 26. Now we go to number 3 on that list. J.J. Watt, obviously not a quarterback, but a dominating defensive lineman and pass rusher. He, in the playoffs, even though he's not the quarterback, not the driving force, is 2. So J.J. Watt, as dominating as he is in his last 2 seasons in Houston, has been 2-14 and 9-7. That's a combined 11-21. So he didn't really change life over the last 2 years as a dominating defensive lineman in the city of Houston. Which brings me to number 4, who should be number 1, Tom Brady, with his 4 Super Bowl rings in 6 chances. Should have won 5, except for the luckiest play in the history of the Super Bowl, executed by one Eli Manning, sticking into the face mask of David Tyree. Don't get me started on that. Tom Brady, who's been in 9 AFC Championship games with a record of 6-3. Tom Brady, who overall in the postseason is 21-8. Think about that. 21-8 in the postseason. Aaron Rodgers, since the Super Bowl, is 2-4. 21-8 overall. And by the way, in just last year's Super Receptions and 124 passing yards just in the fourth quarter, which they won 14-0. Why shouldn't that man be number 1? Please tell.
Well, they say the top 100 players, they're taking into account talent, versatility. They're taking into account all of those things. Tom Brady is 21-8 overall in terms of his playoff record. Skip Bayless, outside of those first 9, because remember, he won his first 9 playoff games, 2001, 2003, 2004. Since that particular moment in time, okay, his record was 12-8. Right before this season,
way better than Aaron Rodgers.
Let me finish. Right before this year, when he won 3 more games this year, and I take no credit away from him, he was 9-8 over a 10-year period. Okay, very, very average. A championship had escaped him for a decade. Keep that in mind. When I think about Aaron Rodgers, I call him a bad man because as a quarterback, there is simply nothing he can't do. He can throw on the run. He can throw in the pocket. He can make every pass. He throws with accuracy. He's got a motor. He's to them defensive-wise. You know, even though some would say in recent memory, Bill Belichick's defense haven't been as formidable as they were in years past. It's not an accident that finally when New England wins a Super Bowl for the first time in a decade, it's when they had Browner and Revis in your secondary. Let's not forget that. And so when I look at it from that perspective, I have no problem with Aaron Rodgers being number one. I do have a problem with Tom Brady being number 4, because I think he should be number 2 on the list.
Thank you.
I think Peyton Manning should be number 3 on the list. I don't think J.J. Watt should come before Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, or Peyton Manning. As a matter of fact, I'm willing to make an argument. If it wasn't for last year, meaning DeMarco Murray running the football lights out, I would tell you a legitimate argument could be made that Tony Romo deserves to be put ahead of J.J. Watt. That's not to knock J.J. Watt. J.J. Watt is incredibly formidable. We understand defensive player of the year. We understand how big time he is, how versatile he is. He's a sack master. He's a run stopper. He gets at the passer. He can even go on offense and catch balls, you know, for touchdowns, for crying out loud.
But is he Lawrence Taylor? Does he have Lawrence Taylor?
He's no Lawrence Taylor.
Nope,
he's no Lawrence Taylor.
Sorry.
And so when I look at that, to me, he's way down on that top 10 list. He may belong in the top 10, but he's way down. I think Antonio Brown deserves a lot more respect. That's 129 receptions for nearly 1,700 yards receiving. Antonio Brown, who deserves his money and will probably get it next season if the Pittsburgh Steelers are smart, assuming he has another year this year. He deserves to be put up there. I'm not sold on Phillip Rivers. He may not. I don't believe he belongs in the top 10. Russell Wilson, as much as I like him and as much as I think he deserves his money, I'm not sure he deserves to be put in the top 10.
I agree.
Because I think about the Legion of Boom, and I say they are the reason that the Seattle Seahawks are as formidable as they have been. So I look at all of those different things. Take Russell Wilson out of there. Put J.J. Watt lower on the top 10 list. Take Phillip Rivers out of there as well. Elevate Antonio Brown. Elevate Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, and those boys. Do that. But don't tell me that, you know, I look at Aaron Rodgers as number 1. I'm going to go with that. But don't tell me Tom Brady is number 4. I'll give you that. He's number 2 on my list, not number 1.
Okay, you keep evaluating Aaron Rodgers in a vacuum while I'm evaluating Tom Brady in the postseason. Is that fair to say?
That's fine.
Okay. And we don't have time to get into this, but do you realize what an average collection of receivers Tom Brady has routinely thrown to throughout his playoff career?
Yeah, but I don't want to call it dip and dunk because Tom Brady can make every throw. And I've seen him throw deep passes. I've seen him throw passes in the pocket, you know, 20, 30 yards downfield. I'm not trying to knock this brother by any stretch of the imagination. But when you look at Green Bay's passing attack, it's far different to me than New England. And if I'm wrong, I defer to the football experts, including yourself, because you've covered football since I was born, for crying out loud. But my attitude is, and I'm not saying that disrespectful, I'm saying it complimentary, but I will tell you that when I look at Aaron Rodgers throwing to Randall Cobb or Jordy Nelson or somebody, it's far different than Tom Brady dropping a 10-yard pass to Gronk or, you know, a 7-yard pass to Amendola or a 12-yard pass to Julian Edelman. I just see a different, I don't want to say conservative because I understand there's a lot that goes into that, but there was a reason why far more often than not, you're not worried about the pressure that's going to come Tom Brady's way because you know what? They're good at dipping the ball off and, you know, and screens.
I wouldn't consider Tom Brady a dink and dunk.
I'm not saying that, but he does a lot more of it than Aaron Rodgers. When I see Aaron Rodgers throwing that football, I see him flinging that bad boy downfield.
So you use the eye test, and I'm using the scoreboard test.
Okay, that's fair. Okay. That's fair.
Floyd Money Mayweather has his next opponent, according to multiple sources. ESPN, however, has not confirmed this. The undefeated welterweight champion plans to fight Andre Berto September 12th in what will likely be the last fight of his career. Berto is a former title holder, but is just 3-3 in his past 6 fights. Stephen A., if this fight comes to fruition, is Berto the right choice for Floyd?
Well, let's be clear. The answer to that immediately for anybody who knows boxing would mean no. Boxing aficionados, present and former, and they all would concede that this is not a fight. By and large, you should look at Money Mayweather and say he should be accepting. But then I'll throw this into you on a couple of things. When our very own Dan Rayfield our boxing mind here at ESPN does a fabulous job for us, questioned Mayweather about that. He thought Mayweather was originally joking when he brought up Andre Berto. He said, "Are you kidding?" And Mayweather seemed to be serious. Obviously, a lot of folks think it's a joke. You look at a guy like Andre Berto, 3-3 in his last 6 fights. Very not impressive at all. Got beat down by the ghost Robert Guerrero. Lost to Victor Ortiz, if I remember correctly. Again, I know Berto personally, and you know, he's been taking. He once had a very, very promising career. He's gotten hit too much, and I think Floyd Money Mayweather would pick him apart. But here's the flip side. Mayweather did bring up the fact that Manny Pacquiao fought Chris Algieri, which was a mismatch for Manny Pacquiao. And it was sort of a tune-up. To me, this is bad if Mayweather is ending his career like he says he is. I've never believed that. I don't believe that. I think Mayweather knows that. I think Mayweather is using this as a tune-up, and then he's going to give Manny Pacquiao a rematch. That's what I think this is. This is god-awful if this is the way Mayweather is going to end his career. Let me be very, very clear. But the uproar in the boxing world for Mayweather taking this fight on free TV, by the way, not pay-per-view. Yep. It's almost one of those things where it's a tune-up, similar to what Manny Pacquiao did with Chris Algieri, and then I'm going to come out of retirement and I'll fight a Manny Pacquiao or a rematch with Miguel Cotto if Cotto is lucky enough to beat Canelo Alvarez. I spoke to our man Max Kellerman. He was like, look, if Canelo wins, then he may fight Triple G, Gennady Golovkin, which to me is a suicide mission because that brother's a knockout artist personified. But if Cotto wins, Cotto, being trained by Freddie Roach, would likely fight Mayweather. That would be great. So if that's fight number 50, or a rematch with Pacquiao is fight number 50, then I have no problem with this. I only have a problem with this if it's his last fight.
Okay. Would you agree that Chris Algieri, at that moment that he fought Manny Pacquiao, was a more dangerous opponent than Andre Berto is right now?
Absolutely not.
I would.
You know why I don't feel that way? Chris Algieri is a good fighter. He's very talented. He's got a lot of heart, really great guy, the whole bit, but is devoid of power. Berto, if nothing else, can hurt you if he catches you right.
That time joke, unless your strategy is operating here. If your strategy is operating, I'm barely okay with it because it is a joke to me.
And if this is his last fight, then I completely concede with you.
Okay, just for the record. In a span from April of 2011 until July of 2013, Andre Berto, not Andre the Giant, he's not the Giant, he lost 3 out of 4 fights.
Yep.
He lost to Victor Ortiz, I think you mentioned that.
That's right.
He lost to Ghost Guerrero.
Got beat up by Ghost Guerrero.
He lost to Soto Caras. Remember that one?
Oh,
that was
yeah, I forgot about that.
So there's another one. What are you doing, Floyd? Like just me? I would rather, on free TV, as you say, I'd rather watch Floyd spar with somebody. I'd rather watch him, seriously, I'd rather watch him warm up with the mitts of Floyd Sr. You know how he just pounds the mitts? I'd watch that before I'd watch this.
That was funny. That was funny. You got me there.
Dude, but he's 35-0. I'm not sure about him. I haven't watched him yet.
I haven't either.
But he's the #1 contender in the welterweight division, okay? And next on the list, going down past Manny, down the list, Timothy Bradley. You know, why hasn't Floyd messed with Timothy Bradley? He's physical. He is tough, man. He's a tough out.
You know, he would Providnikov.
Right. I know.
Knocked him unconscious, and he was still swinging even though he was unconscious for crying out loud.
Yep.
And the other thing is, Bradley's got a lot of heart. The only problem with Bradley is that he doesn't have punching. He doesn't have punching power, but he can take a punch, and that's what would make it tough.
Okay, and finally, there is Keith Thurman. I was not impressed with his last fight. He didn't show me a whole lot.
But he's big time.
He's 26-0 with, what's he got?
With
22 knockouts.
With knockout power.
He definitely has knockout.
You talked about him, you know, not fighting Pacquiao, and you know, or he fought Pacquiao, and then, you know, well, he's going to run from Canelo. Well, he schooled Canelo, okay? He schooled. The Pacquiao fight may have been boring and disappointing with Canelo, he just schooled Canelo. He beat Cotto, albeit controversial. He did that. He fought Oscar De La Hoya twice, okay? He fought the Ghost Guerrero straight out of jail. Fought the Ghost Guerrero and just gave him a boxing lesson, okay? So what I'm trying to say to you is that we have to come to a point. If the great marvelous Marvin Hagler and others want to knock Floyd, I have no problem with it. That's true. But the flip side is Floyd has fought practically everybody. Anybody that can make you money, that was a big name, Floyd said, get him in front of me, and I'll beat him. So, and that is what he has done. And this is the thing, and I want to say this because this is very important, especially with me watching fights this weekend. By the way, like I said, you know, Thurman may not have been that impressive. This kid Gonzalez, he beat Pascal Friday. He got robbed as far as I'm concerned. He won that fight. I was watching that fight Saturday night, and this kid Kovalev, this brother's big time, light heavyweight. This brother who beat Bernard Hopkins. Kovalev is special, okay? I love him. But I'm going to say this to you as we're talking about this sport. When you look at somebody like Floyd, all of them want to make Floyd's money. All of them. But they want to knock how he does it. You know, if maybe instead of insulting him, why don't you take notes? Because again, he owns his own brand, he's his own boss, he's doing his own thing. But in the process of doing so, it's not like he's ducking people. He's fought the people we said he fought. And his style, Skip, I'm going to say this to you again. Tell me what Floyd has done differently than what he said he would do. We buy these pay-per-view fights because we have been told these guys are coming for Floyd. Floyd says, I'm too skilled for them. Watch me school them. And that's what he does. He's not a knockout artist. He's not a big chance taker. He's not a big risk taker and risk maker. That's not him. He gets into the ring. He reminds you that the sport is called boxing, and then he goes about
running.
But he goes, no. You might say that with Pacquiao, and we can disagree with that. But you can't say that Floyd is schooling brothers. Okay. You're saying you coming for him, and you can't touch him. That's not his problem.
Bottom line here. If Andre Berto somehow, some way, even in a long shot, winds up being Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s last fight,
that's bad.
That's bad.
That's bad. We agree there.
Okay, thank you.
That can't be how you can't end your career with a fight against Berto. I'm sure he's going to have another fight after Berto.
Geico presents Strange Saving Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Pittsburgh has always been known for its stout defense, dating all the way back on track, telling the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, quote, I feel they're going to take what happened last year to heart. I know there's some change there with new defensive coordinator Keith Butler and coach Dick LeBeau gone and some new guys. But they're really starting to come along. They're a fast, physical group. It'll be neat to see what they do this year. But we still want to score 30 points.
Props to Big Ben Roethlisberger, who's practically taken every snap over the last 2 years. 4,900 plus passing yards last year, led the league, 103.3 passer rating, number 3 in the league. He's got a big-time weapon in Antonio Brown, 2,929 receptions, nearly 1,700 yards. Wheaton is no scrub. I just look at some of these guys right now, and I'm just saying to myself, look, you still got Wheaton, still got Heath Miller, Le'Veon Bell. If there's anything that's going to get in the way of it, it's the factory games due to the marijuana issue when he and LeGarrette Blount was going to Philadelphia for an exhibition game in the middle of the afternoon. I forgive him. I love them both. But damn it, don't do it again. Here's the deal. In the end, what it comes down to is this. The Steelers are loaded with weapons. And the way I look at it, Skip, here's why I think they got a good chance of pulling off exactly what they said. You have to remember, Your defense is ranked 18th, but you were 27th against the pass. People could throw on you all day long. And so when you have that reality, there's possessions that you're not getting because your defense was ill-equipped to stop anybody for the most part. I expect that to change, although moderately. I don't expect an extreme case, like all of a sudden you're one of the top 5 defenses in the NFL. But you got to be better than 18th, okay? And I think that they've gone in a different direction. Mad respect and props to the great Dick LeBeau for all of his years of service, but I do think it was time for the defense to move in a different direction, and Tomlin and the Rooneys elevating, this kid Keith Butler to this. I don't want to call him a kid, but this guy Keith Butler and earned his money. But in the end, what it comes down to is that even if they're moderately better, they get more offensive possessions, which gives Big Ben Roethlisberger, along with Le'Veon Bell, along with Antonio Brown and Miller and Wheaton, and those boys with a decent offensive line. I think because, remember, Ben Roethlisberger was only sacked like 33 times last year. All right, it's the least amount of sacks he suffered, having 13 or more starts in a season in his career. So that offensive line tells me they're doing something. I look at it from that perspective, and I say they'll have more from the Steelers offense.
Contender? Super Bowl contender?
Absolutely.
Okay.
When you say Super Bowl contender, then I got to think your defense going to show up. This ain't Dan Fouts and the Chargers with Kellen Winslow and Charlie Joyner and Chuck Muncie and those boys from in the 80s. It's a high-powered, potent offense, but it ain't like that. And because it's not like that, and the defense is so suspect, I'm going to say the Steelers are a playoff team. But when you say Super Bowl contender, I don't know. I'm on the fence.
So it has come to this for you.
No. The first play I ever saw was the Immaculate Reception.
Oh, okay.
Frank Harris. The first thing I've ever seen.
Pretty good play I've ever seen. No wonder you.
And I love the gold and black cinch.
And during those days, that football team was best known for what?
Steel curtain defense.
Steel curtain. Okay. It has come to this, that you're even throwing out a Dan Fouts reference in relation to the offense versus the defense. You're saying it's not that. Just you're in the ballpark of that off last year. When, by the way, this defense allowed 30 or more points 4 different times.
That's right.
So,
and gave up what, 51 to New England?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, wow. So when Ben says, I think we can score Malu, you got down on Ike Taylor, but he's not there just as a veteran leader. Keith Butler elevated linebacker coach to coordinator. You know who's going to be the coordinator of this defense in my humble estimation? This is just from a distance. I believe the head coach, who has a defensive background, Mike Tomlin, I believe he will take over this defense in effect. He'll become very hands-on with this defense and try to take it up to a level that he wasn't comfortable trying to take it up to with the great Dick LeBeau there. Dick LeBeau is great, and I think he's going to do a good
Mike Tomlin wanted to have more of an imprint.
I totally agree.
To do with Dick LeBeau there. By the way, correction, because the Steelers didn't play New England last year. They gave up the 51 the year before.
The year before. I thought that's what you were talking about. Yeah. Okay, so I look at these numbers. This defense was just flat out bad last year, like scary bad.
Yes.
I'm looking at these numbers Jared Bell had today in USA Today. They gave up 4.36 yards per rush, which is their worst since 1964. That's not the Steelers. And they gave up 50 an interception last year. That's definitely not the Steelers we used to know and love. So can they dramatically change this year? They're still hanging in with James Harrison. I don't know. Ryan Shazier, who'd you brought?
I like
Jones.
Shazier and Jarvis Jones. I mean, those are keys.
Okay.
Those are the young bloods. They got to show up.
But I look at what happened last year. They gave up to open the season 27 at home to Cleveland. And then they went to Cleveland and gave up 31. And Indy got 34. I guess there's no shame there. But the shame was, remember, 27 by Tampa Bay and Pittsburgh. Remember that? They lost to Tampa Bay at home. And they still went 11-5. I know. Okay? So they went out in their first playoff game at home, arch rival, Baltimore Ravens, do a 30-17 number in a playoff game. Fluco, he was definitely Flacco that day. So can they fix this on the fly? Because if they can't, they'll have a chance to win the division again, but they're going to be a first-round exit in the playoffs.
Offensively, I'm not worried about them. Defensively, they added no free agents in their secondary, but they drafted 3 defensive blacks. My problem is 2 of them are no taller than 5'10". That concerns me. You know, in this game, whether it's a Megatron, a Dez, a Demarius, you know, I understand Antonio Brown belongs in that top 5 conversation, but most of these guys are big dudes, and you're not going to be but so successful covering them when you give up that kind of height advantage. They drafted somebody in the 2nd and the 4th round. I'm concerned about that, but ultimately, when you were as bad as they were last year, there's really nowhere to go but up.
You got it.
World Wrestling Entertainment Inc. has severed ties with Hulk Hogan amid a report that one of the biggest stars in professional wrestling history used racial slurs in a conversation caught on a sex tape 8 years ago. The company deleted most references to Hogan on its website and issued a statement Friday saying it had terminated its contracts with him. Hulk Hogan released the following statement to People magazine. It was unacceptable for me to have used that offensive language. There is no excuse for it, and I apologize for having done it. Hogan called his departure from a WWE a resignation. Stephen A. Smith, you're fired.
We can't dispute that. When you listen to the rhetoric coming out of his mouth, the stuff that he was spewing, it was vicious. It was meant in the negative fashion that Skip so eloquently states on multiple occasions where, you know, it doesn't matter to me and a lot of black folks whether it ends with the A or the hard ER, as Skip would say it. But clearly, if anybody meant it with the hard ER, it would be what we heard from Hulk Hogan, E. I grew up watching wrestling. I was an NWA fan when Ric Flair, the Nature Boy, who I had the pleasure of meeting during the NBA Finals, by the way, and Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream, and Magnum TA and the Road Warriors. Those are the guys I grew up loving. Of course, I saw Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant and Jimmy Superfly Snooker and, you know, all of those boys. And I remember not paying that much attention to it at that time. But I remember the Rowdy Pipers having Jimmy Superfly Snuka on one of his shows, if I remember correctly, after insulting him and then surrounding the set with coconuts and pineapples and stuff like that and then knocking him over the head with it. I remember Booker T being in the ring with Triple H and Triple H uttering some negative words in his direction. I remember the one and only Jesse the Body Ventura, who not only was a wrestler, but also happens to be the 38th governor of the state of Minnesota, elected there in 1999, served from 1999 to 2003. This man was a governor. It was not before. It was after he sat up there and would call, a particular black wrestler buckwheat, when he would sit there and you know, I forgot who it was. I think it was Tito Santana, when he called his move the flying burrito and, you know, brought in the words tacos and all of this other stuff. I mean, when you see the history of racial insensitivity permeating the World Wrestling, at the time it was the World Wrestling Federation, now it's the WWE, it amazed me how quick they were to dismiss themselves from Hulk Hogan when a legitimate argument that quite honestly appeared at least to be encouraged by this organization in an effort to really establish yourself as a villain, thereby establishing heroes and making sure they combated one another so you had somebody to root for, root against, and then elevated their product. So seeing that as a black man, I know that what Hulk Hogan said was egregious and heinous, and he deserved to be fired. I'm not going to even waste my breath talking about that. It is clear how he feels about black people. I can tell you that much. There ain't no way to deny that. And especially since it's something as serious as you talking about your daughter dating. We understand how you feel, Hulk Hogan. And narrowly it did was the fact that this happened 8 years ago. It was privately in his home. He was talking to a friend who secretly taped it. And, you know, you get upset about that because even though, you know, I doubt sincerely that you'll catch any of us saying something so heinous, the fact of the matter is I don't know if any of us can say every single word that we say privately is something that we would want everybody to know publicly. But
you indicate a small measure of sympathy because his very sport that you have long loved has encouraged its villains to play to racist stereotypes. Am I right?
Well, it's not sympathy because of that, because I've always had a problem with it, which is why I turned away from the sport.
Really? Because I was going to ask you, how can you still be a wrestling fan when they resort to this?
I'm a Rock fan, meaning Dwayne Johnson. I'm a big Rock fan. I'm a big John Cena fan, but I'm not a fan of the sport. And the sympathy, the word sympathy that you bring into play, my only sympathetic part about all of this is that it was a private conversation 8 years ago in a home, and it was secretly taped by somebody, because something like that could happen to anybody, and I don't like stuff like that, but that's about it.
Okay, just for the record, even when you were a kid watching wrestling, did you think it was real?
No.
Okay, so just for the record, these villains are play acting. They're playing a part, right?
Yes.
Okay, just for the record.
Yes,
I want to make sure you didn't grow up thinking this is all real.
No,
okay,
none of it. I knew it was fake.
Now, back to your privacy issue, which is going to take me back to the Riley Cooper incident that the Eagles faced.
Right.
I'm going to say again what I told you that next day when the story broke. That word that he was caught on cell phone video uttering at a country concert, the one, as you point out, ending in the hard ER, spoken by a white man in that case, it's the most evil word in our language. I told you then, I wish there's some way we could eradicate that word and all it has stood for down through history of this country, the shameful history of this country.
Understood.
Now back to the privacy issue. Obviously, Riley Cooper was off work. He was at a country concert. They said he'd had a few drinks. I have no idea about his intoxication level at that point.
Right.
But he was said to be somewhat intoxicated, and I don't care. If that was the case, then it was just truth serum, because even in private, that man revealed what was in his heart of hearts. That's just me. That's how, because if you're capable of not just saying that word, he screamed that word, and it was somewhat in an angry context. He'd had an issue with one of the security people, I think, and he said, "I'll fight." He used it plural. "I'll fight all the ends here." And just for the record, not trying to be holier than thou, but you know how deeply I feel about that word. I feel so deeply about it that even when I go home and talk to Ernestine about Riley Cooper, I can't speak that word in the context of this is what he said. I can't even make it go through my lips. It's just the N-word to me, period, end of story. So, again, Hulk Hogan 8 years ago, intimate setting, private. I'm sorry. I don't care. It is an invasion of privacy, you can argue. But in the end, the truth is the truth. I think you spoke the truth of what's in your heart of hearts, right? And I think that was your conclusion
from it. The way you describe, I look at Riley Cooper and Hulk Hogan totally differently. I look at Riley Cooper inebriated at a country music concert, and even though you may be right that that word may have been in his heart, I consider the circumstances, drinking, out at a country music concert, being free and loose and acting up or whatever because you don't have all your faculties in order. That's entirely different than a man pretty upset that his daughter is dating a black man and goes into that kind of diatribe. I understand, and I want to be very, very clear about this. I have no problem with your position because as a white individual, you have a right to have a different perspective. I'm not saying to you that you're wrong in any way. I'm saying to you that I absorb it differently.
You do.
Not to say that Riley Cooper should be absolved.
No.
But I absorbed it differently.
But I thought for the good of the football team in the locker room, he had to be gone the next day. And you said, no, hold on.
Because what I'm saying to you is that as a black man, I could sit there and walk into work with Riley Cooper the next day, look at him if he apologized to my face and say, is that really him all the time? I can ask that question. We can't present that question to me about Hulk Hogan based. It just resonates far deeper. Like you just, I saw Riley Cooper trying to act like a tough guy and inebriated. I felt hatred coming from Hulk Hogan. I don't know how else to put it. I really, really don't.
Really?
And so I felt hatred coming from him.
If I were you, I would have felt some hatred coming from Riley Cooper.
Again, I grew up, I'm from Hollis, Queens, bro. And I'm telling you right now, I know I've met plenty of white folks who under those conditions may have uttered those words. And then all of a sudden they catch themselves because they look around and a bunch of brothers looking at them like, what you just say? You understand what I'm saying? Whereas with Hulk Hogan, it wouldn't have been no looking around like, what did you just say? Somebody might have been looking to do something to him, and all those wrestling moves and that size that he had available to him, it may have been in his best interest to use at that particular moment had he said that around people, because you could literally, the hatred appeared tangible. And that was the difference. But again, you're not absolving either of them. I'm just telling you that there's different layers to it. And with Hulk Hogan, it came across as that volatile. I just have a problem when, I don't care how much you hate me, I don't care how much you hate a group of people or whatever the case may be, I do have a problem innately with you not being able to have a private conversation in your home. I do have that problem, but that's not with this. I mean, it is what it is. I'm just saying, my God, you know, you can just walk into anybody's home and take their conversation.
You often tell me that there are times when you feel like people you're dealing with have an agenda that's not up on the table.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Well,
that's right.
Okay.
That's right. You're right.
Now, according to SportsIllustrated.com, the New England Patriots are the most hated team in the NFL. This was attributed to the Patriots' success along with the Deflategate and Spygate controversies. Bill Belichick was deemed the most hated coach in the NFL, which was also associated with the controversies, his on-the-field trickery.
My remarks, Stephen A. Smith, by saying, you know how much I love the Patriots, but it's mostly because I so admire Tom Brady as a quarterback, just as a quarterback. Part of this whole notion is fueled by jealousy and envy on the part of the rest of the league. So we get that. This is a model organization starting from Mr. Kraft on down. But when we get to Bill Belichick, I've often had issues. All-time great coach, obviously. But I've often asked you on this show, why would the great Bill Belichick stoop to Spygate cheating? Because he got caught red-handed. And without belaboring the point, you and I both know, this has been well documented, Eric Mangini, who we both know well, worked for Bill Belichick, got the head coaching job of the Jets, and said, hey, Bill, called him and said, hey, that little thing that you do where it's borderline, sort of gray area, illegally taping the defensive signals. Don't do that to me. Do it to everybody else, but Bill, don't do it to me. And of course, Bill did it to Eric, and Eric said, I'm sorry, I'm going to turn you in, and it turned into Spygate. Bill public suspicion that their walkthroughs the day before those Super Bowls got videotaped by one Bill Belichick, at least by his orders. Really? Bill Belichick? And then I think back to the fact that he did get fired in Cleveland, and before he had Tom Brady fall out of heaven into his lap, thanks to the Mo Lewis hit on Drew Bledsoe, Bill Belichick was on the hot seat in New England. I'm not sure he would have lasted if Tom Brady hadn't fallen into his lap. I'm not sure he wouldn't have been fucked on before, saying, hey, they've always cheated. Through Ryan's career, he looked at New England as cheaters. Was that aimed at Tom Brady? No. That was aimed at Bill Belichick, or tied at the hip. I have never thought they were, quote-unquote, partners in crime, so to speak. I agree. Not saying these are crimes. I've always thought it came from the top down, team-wise, from Bill Belichick. Maybe it trickled down to Tom Brady, but now we're back to Deflategate. Did that come from Brady? Did Belichick order those balls to be deflated, or did Tom Brady? Well, I hope we get to the bottom of that. But most of this is pointed. It's aimed at Bill Belichick, especially by the players, the Ryan Clarks. They believe he is the one at fault here over years and years in New England.
Well, I think that all of those things are correct, but I think that when you talk about Bill Belichick, is that the biggest problem is that he epitomizes and personifies what's wrong in the eyes of Joe Public and Molly Public, per se. I think what happens is that they personify what the problem is in the eyes of the fans with today's professional sports world, period. You're in the midst, over the weekend we learned that each owner in the National Football League got a check for $220. The players are getting some of it. The Bill Belichicks of the world, making about $7.5 million per year, is getting some of it. The list goes on and on. And you've got folks that get so enthralled and so fixated and transfixed on this sport, they wonder, why can't you oblige? What's wrong with a press conference where you're talking? Literally talking to folks like they're human beings instead of talking to the media like they're peons. People don't realize that regardless of what they want, whether they're willing to admit it or not, when you talk to the media that way, you're talking to an extension of the people, because that's the only form of communication. Somebody can't walk up to you on the street and ask you an abundance of questions about yesterday's games or today's game or what you got planned in the future, etc., etc. You have to do that. And so when you have such a dismissive attitude and you are so aloof and dismissive with people, it comes across that way. When you have owners who are that way, when you have executives who are that way, when you have coaches who are that way, ultimately you can't knock the players for being that way. And as a result, that sort of trickle-down effect just reminds everyone how low they are, just in a food chain of things compared to you as a multi-millionaire athlete. Go ahead, Molly.
It's the Patriot way, though.
It is the Patriot way, but that doesn't make it the right.
It works for them.
Well, it works for them in terms of winning, and it also has real problems going on in the world where it's no longer going to be the case where you get to sit back and lean on the fact that sports, is not just a microcosm of society, it's a distraction from what plagues you in the real world, and suddenly you're not going to be there doing it. I thought Major League Baseball did a phenomenal job, for example, when you had those riots going on in Baltimore, and they ultimately had a game with no fans in attendance. Because let me tell you something right now, I guarantee you, if you talk to every one of those players that played in that game, they're going to say to you, it was really, really different being in that stadium, and it was empty, and there was nobody watching. There's an elevated level of appreciation I'm most certain they would admit that they had. And Bill Belichick comes across as one of those dudes who has no appreciation for that. He tries to act like, and I like Bill Belichick personally, I really, really do. And he's totally different. When I see him at Boston Celtics game, what a nice, kind man he comes across as being, at least to me. But I will tell you, I wonder how Bill Belichick would feel if he wasn't playing in front of any fans. And I wonder how he would feel if he wasn't getting paid that money. Well, sure. The combination of the two. I bet you dudes would act differently again. You do stuff like that because you can.
What was the most expansive and forthcoming press conference Bill Belichick ever gave? Yeah, when he volunteered to do the press conference. Remember that?
That's it.
The Saturday before the Super Bowl? And he didn't even need any questions because he didn't need any questions. He didn't want any questions. He was basically saying, don't look at me. Don't blame me. But he even went, my cousin Vinny. Remember the reference?
We've got more superlatives, gentlemen. Also, according to SportsIllustrated.com, Dan Snyder is the most hated owner, due in part because opposing fans can't stand him. He's clashed with the media, and Snyder is engaged in a PR battle to keep the team name as the Redskins. Stephen A., your reaction?
It's well-deserved as long as it's not personal. What I mean by that is that if this was something about Dan Snyder's personality or something along those lines, I'd be like, be quiet. Y'all don't know the man. How you going to knock the man personally? But I think when you look at the Redskins under his stewardship, I think it's like, what is it, like 8 different quarterbacks? Or rather like almost like 8 different head coaches, like 16 different quarterbacks. I forgot the exact statistic. And then when you look at all of these years, and I mean, in his era, you literally have 4 playoff appearances to show for it, and you went home for the wild card 2 times, and you went to the divisional playoff game, which means you haven't even been to an NFC championship game since 1991. That's 20-plus years and counting under the stewardship of Dan Snyder. And this is a franchise that has multiple Super Bowl championships on its resume, courtesy of Jack Kent Cook, Joe Gibbs, etc. So he doesn't win. He's constantly trying to make money, can't seem to make up his mind. Play training camp to watch his team during training camp before that was poo-pooed because such an uproar was made about it. We didn't even bring into account your issue with Native Americans in this nation. You understand? And how disrespectful it comes across. And remember, we go back to Jack Kent Cook and Charles Mann being interviewed by a dear friend who has now passed us by, the Lindsey Zarniaks of the world, can speak to that, the great George Michaels. God, I miss that man. Love you, sir. I got to tell you, when he interviewed Jack Kent Cook on the Sports Machine, which was must-see television every Sunday night for most of us in the sports world, he sat there and he asked Jack Kent Cook years ago. He said, it's offensive to these people. He said, I ain't trying to offend anybody. I don't care. I'm not changing it. It ain't happening, blah, blah, blah. And Charles Mann who played for the Redskins, who was on the team at the time his owner made that statement, responded by saying, it doesn't matter how I feel. If it's offensive to them, that's all that should matter. You understand? So you look at Dan Snyder, and he wants to hold on to the Redskins name. It's incredibly profitable. You see a lot of people in the D.C., in the nation's capital, that swear by the name Redskins. They don't see any problem. They think it's their problem. They want to hold on to the name for the Redskins for dear life. And by the way, it's not a racial issue in terms of there's white folks that feel that way, there's black folks that feel that way. Redskins fans, a lot of them feel, more than half of them feel, hold on to the name of the Redskins. The problem is the Native Americans have stood up and they have said to you, it's offensive to us. And you essentially have said, you don't particularly care. Our studies show otherwise. That's the way it's going to be.
It'll be that nickname that he clings to, and I think will fight a losing battle ultimately to hang in with. Because I think most right-thinking people already know that he is so wrong. My man, Robert Griffin III. He coddles him. Maybe that has created a little animosity, both regionally and nationally, that it looks like he's spoiled RG3 rotten, the way he's treated him. The way he's sort of superseded the coach occasionally to say, no, you're okay, you do this, and basically taken the authority out of the coach's hands. So I think that's operating a little bit when you condemn him, quote unquote, as the most hated owner.
You know the thing about it, Skip? Let's stay here for a second. I don't blame Dan Snyder for that. I blame Robert Griffin III, if indeed that's accurate. Robert Griffin III, RG3, has denied that that is the case, according to him. His father has denied various things, and let's give them their respect by acknowledging for the record that they categorically denied some of the things that's been spewed out about them in terms of their relationship with Daniel Snyder and how they use it to their advantage. They denied that. But the flip side is, undoubtedly so, players inside that locker room feel otherwise, because I've spoken to them and I know that for a fact. And to me, Robert Griffin III is not 7 years old. You're a grown man, a highly intelligent man. And because of that, it's incumbent upon you to see that even though Daniel Snyder is the one that cuts the check, he ain't the one that's out there on the field with you every Sunday. And you have to know better than alienating them because you got it good with Snyder. I can't blame Snyder for sitting there saying, a guy that I traded picks for to move up to get with the #2 overall pick is my guy. I love him. I can't knock Daniel Snyder for having that kind of attitude.
He did that.
That's right.
Daniel Snyder that was the owner's call,
Well, that was definitely the owner's call. That was definitely the owner's call. It wasn't Mike Shanahan's call. I can promise you that.
I know.
You made that call, so of course he's going to support his investment. It's up to RG3 to see, look, it's important. I appreciate that the man cut the check, and I'm going to work that relationship, but these dudes here who I got to ride and die with, I got to make sure I'm down with them.
I'm with you.
And now, for Geico's edition of Stuff Found in Your Car, we go inside your side door pocket.
Hello, yes, the crumpled receipt with gum in it. From your anniversary dinner, you sprang for expensive wine, your server was Beth. That dinner was a couple $100. Money you could get back if you switched to Geico and saved hundreds of dollars on your car insurance. I bet you'd save that receipt, frame it even. But really, where did I go wrong? Was it the corkage fee?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com today.
Happy birthday. Today's A-Rod's 40th, and with his 3 home runs on Saturday, Rodriguez is 23 home runs shy of becoming the 4th player in Major League history to hit 700 home runs. A-Rod is currently 85 home runs behind Barry Bonds for most home runs in Major League history. Skip, can he catch Bonds?
Stephen A. Smith, I must admit to you, I have been sweeping what A-Rod has recently been doing under my mental carpet. But today, when I took a closer look at these numbers, I realized, in all seriousness, I have lost touch with, lost track of, just how close Alexander Emmanuel Rodriguez is to Barry Bonds' all-time home run record. I look at this and I say, wait a second, he only needs 85 to tie? I mean, seriously, only 85 away from Barry Bonds, my all-time favorite player. So if I project A-Rod out for the rest of this year to total regular season 35 home runs, is that fair? Is that realistic? At the pace he's on, I think that's pretty realistic. That would mean he would go into next year, and he has 2 years left on his Yankee contract at about $20 million a year. He would need only 73 going into next year to tie. By the way, Barry hit 73 in 1 year, but that's a whole other story. On the all-time list. Then we would get into the issue I've always had with A-Rod ever passing Barry Bonds. And that would be in that third year, if in fact he was within striking distance. I have so long questioned Alex's, can I say, backbone, his mental toughness, that I think he would start to crumble under the pressure that would descend upon him to pass Barry Bonds. But right now, he's just free and easy. He's just free swinging because nobody expected any of this from him. And he is coming through with, aren't we all shocked by this? Like, I think you're pleasantly shocked by this.
Well, I'm pleasantly shocked if you're talking about the Yankees benefiting from it. I'm pleasantly shocked from the standpoint that the Yankees in first place, about 8 games in front of Toronto, by the way, American League East, which is relatively weak this year, Baltimore, Toronto, Tampa, Boston, it doesn't matter. These things will happen. Joe Girardi being the fantastic manager that he is, because catchers usually end up being good managers on occasion. Look at Joe Girardi, look at Mike Matheny. This is why Tony La Russa highly recommended Matheny.
Joe Torre did okay.
I'm just saying, Joe Torre, absolutely, you know, with the 4 World Series titles. I just look at it from that perspective, and I say, you know what, listen, I'm happy for Alex Rodriguez. Here's my thing. First of all, I do not believe he's going to catch Barry Bonds. I do believe he's going to catch Babe Ruth. I do believe that he has everything that we don't find out that he's juicing again. That's my issue, because I got news for you. I've spoken to some people in baseball. They believe he's doing it right now. But I'm just talking about people who cover this, but just their opinion. They have no proof. They don't believe it. They're just that suspicious because it's Alex. Right?
These is it like insiders?
Yeah. Again, I don't want to give the impression that it's on reporting or anything like that. I'm just saying their opinion is he's got to be doing something to be doing this, because they saw him over the last 3 years. And they're like, listen, his last 2 complete seasons with the Yankees, he had 16 home runs and 18 home runs, okay? He batted 276, 272. All right, then last year, obviously, he was going. This year, he's batting 277. Nobody is saying they know anything, that they've heard of anything. I don't want to come across, I'm not reporting anything. Chuck, calm down, because I know editor Chuck's going to lose his mind. No, I'm not saying that in any way, Chuck. Calm down. What I am saying is people are sitting back just as spectators, like I am, and they're saying, we find this very hard to believe that the Alex Rodriguez that we saw in his last 2 seasons that he played with the New York Yankees is this dude. We don't see that. We don't see 277. We don't see 23 home runs and 58 RBIs. We don't see the second leading home run hitter on the team.
By the way,
this late in the season,
440-foot shots.
That's right, and exactly. And I'm talking about monster shots. Okay, we didn't expect to see that. Okay, so that is bad enough or good enough that he's doing it. But I mean, we're 90 games into the season, and he's doing this. We're approaching August, and he's doing this. So they're looking at him like I'm looking at him. Just nothing more to it than, I find this very hard to believe. I hope that you're legit. I hope that there's no Balco, there's no there's none of that. I hope there's none of that. That's all I'm saying. There's no reporting that's going on. Nobody's saying we found out or discovered anything. Chuck, calm down. All we're saying is that we're just looking at it. We're skeptical.
Yes, you've been
and I'm a Yankee fan, and I'm skeptical. Because let me tell you something right now, and this is the most damning thing that I can. The problem with it that I'm going to have, and we'll find out, is in September. Look, damn it, I'm trying to win a World Series, okay? I ain't encouraging you to cheat or anything like that. But I told you before, and I say it again, half jokingly, but I still say it. I mean, damn it, if you're going to cheat all the way. Don't half step.
Well, he did carry you.
Don't half step. Don't half step. Don't stop it. There was cheating going on then. I didn't see that. I didn't hear anything about that. I think biogenesis and that stuff took place after the World Series of 2009. So let's hope that that's the case here.
Okay. In defense of Alex, just for the record, he is an extremely gifted man and always has been.
I agree.
Seriously. Like as gifted maybe as any player who ever came along, all 5 tools, right?
which is what makes it worse. Because it shows as gifted as you are,
mentally weak.
You're just as morally bankrupt.
I know.
Because you didn't need to do it, and you did it anyway.
Yep.
In a Hall of Fame conference call last week, Tim Brown talked about when he was a free agent back in 1994, and he asked Michael Irvin what he thought about him coming to Dallas to be the Cowboys' #2 behind Irv. The playmaker went out of his way to make it clear he didn't want it to happen, even saying he was going to call Jerry Jones to make sure it doesn't happen. Tim Brown was upset by this because he wanted to come home and play for the Cowboys. Skip, your squad.
My squad.
Whose side are you on?
Stephen A. Smith, I am completely on the playmaker's side, completely on Michael Irvin's side. No problem with him saying thanks, but no thanks to the great Tim Brown, who obviously is born and raised in Dallas, Texas. Michael Irvin is exactly right about those back-to-back Super Bowl champs in 92 and 93. At heart, basically, they were a running football team, a very simple running football team. Emmett right, Emmett left behind the best run blocking, if not the best pass blocking line in all of pro football in those days. Michael Irvin in 1993 averaged 5.5 catches per game. That's 88 total balls for number 88.
What year was that?
What's that?
Which year was that?
93.
Okay.
1993.
Got it.
Emmitt Smith was the MVP of the league in the regular season, and he was the MVP of the Super Bowl because they rushed the ball a few more times than they passed the football. How shocking would that be in today's NFL? I mean, it just doesn't happen anymore. So, again, even Troy Aikman took a back seat to Emmitt Smith. Gladly, I always admired Troy would just say, I can't put up big numbers because we basically run the football. That's what Norv Turner wanted to do because that's what Jimmy Johnson wanted to do as the head coach. So can you blame Michael for saying we were scrambling to get Alvin Harper a few balls as the other wide receiver, Kevin Williams as a slot receiver, get him a couple of catches a game. Daryl Johnson's going to catch a couple as the fullback coming out of the backfield. Emmett's going to catch 2 or 3 coming out of the backfield. Where is Tim Brown going to fit in here? What more do you need on this football team? I'm sorry, I'm with 88 because when it was time to throw the football for a first down, I'm throwing it to 88 and only 88.
Well, this is an interesting debate, Skip Bayless, because it's really not a debate more than it is an inquiry. Answer me these couple of questions. Number one, or whatever, how many questions I may have. Number one, was that Michael Irvin's reasoning and rationale for not wanting Tim Brown in your estimation?
Sure.
Okay,
well, I'm not sure what your question is.
I'm talking about, you say Emmitt Smith, they were running the football, whatever. I'm wondering, I'm asking, because I know the playmaker just like you know the playmaker. I'm wondering if he didn't want Tim Brown because he wanted to make sure he was going to be the guy getting the ball when it went up in the air.
Well, if you're only getting 5.5 a game and you put Tim Brown opposite you, your catches might go down to 4 a game, right?
Yeah, it might go down to 4 a game, but I guess what I'm saying to you is this. Tim Brown is big time. Tim Brown's a Hall of Famer. Tim Brown has got more pass-catching yards than Michael Irvin, has more touchdowns in his career, 100 to 85 or 87, I believe, than Michael Irvin. Now, obviously, because of what you said.
Exactly. Rich Gannon led the league.
That's obviously so, and I get all of that, but there's no doubting the greatness that Tim Brown put on display. And when you consider the fact that Dallas had won back-to-back, they had lost that year that Tim Brown wanted to come. That's when they lost that NFC Championship game to primetime Deion Sanders.
New coach, Barry Switzer. Emmitt Smith had a hamstring pull going into the NFC Championship game in San Francisco, and they almost pulled it out anyway.
They almost pulled it out anyway. There's no question about it. But I think that was like destiny's ride to some degree. You know how where all the dominoes just fall in. That's why it's going to be really interesting to watch the Golden State Warriors in the NBA this year because so many things fell their way.
Totally agree.
In leading to that
That's
championship.
A good analogy.
You're going to get an opportunity to show how valid that championship is next year. Well, the Dallas Cowboys, what made it valid is that they came back that very next year and won the Super Bowl after getting knocked off that year. Now, granted, they acquired prime time. He was on San Francisco the year they beat Dallas in the NFC Championship game, then switched to the Dallas Cowboys the very next year, and the Dallas Cowboys won the Super Bowl against Pittsburgh. Neil O'Donnell throwing the interception to Larry Brown. Don't even get me started with that because I'm still sick to my stomach over that damn Neil O'Donnell. But the point that I'm trying to make to you is this. I'm looking at Michael Irvin, heart, guts, the whole 9. You know how we feel about the playmaker. He's a Hall of Famer for a reason. Highly competitive. I also would ask you to think about this, Skip. Could it be that he wasn't down with what we call the LeBron flow? for lack of a better word. He ain't trying to join forces with a dude like Tim Brown, who's big time. He's like, you the best, you one of the best.
That's right.
I'm one of the best. You stay with your team, I'm gonna stay with mine, and we'll do it that way.
Jordan-esque to me.
Exactly.
Like Michael Jordan says, I don't need you.
Exactly. Well, what I'm saying, it's not a matter of not needing you. It's about wanting to compete against the best instead of them joining with you to compete. I'm wondering what was the motivation behind what Michael Irvin said is all I'm trying to say. And I don't have any problem with what the motivation was, because I know Michael Irvin ain't scared of anybody. Michael Irvin is the ultimate warrior. He compete against anybody. He's a playmaker. He's a champion 3 times over. That's not to be questioned. I'm simply saying, I'm wondering, was his motivation? We run the football. There ain't but so many touches to begin with. I'm only getting 5.5 a game. So that ain't going to happen. Or was it that, look, you one of the best. I'm one of the best. Stay where you are. I'm going to stay where I'm at, and we can compete
so are you
that
suggesting,
way.
You're asking, was he being an insecure diva receiver to say, oh, I don't want to share my catches?
If you want to use it insecure, I don't think insecure is the word, but that's
he's not. He's not. And I've said many times, and I covered these teams, so I know, in fact, I wrote a book about that team. In the end, Michael Irvin was the leader of those Cowboy championship teams that should have won 4 straight Super Bowls.
Got it.
And in the end, he knows that he didn't need Tim Brown, but we didn't need Tim Brown because of the chemistry of the club going into the next year.
I guess
they were a young team going into their prime.
And I'm asking you, what was the overriding emotion in your opinion? Is it that he didn't need Tim Brown, or is that we didn't need Tim Brown? Which came first is what I'm asking.
Michael was always a we guy to me.
Got it.
I know he had his off-the-field issues, and I know people.
No, on the field, he was a we guy.
Hey, just such a we guy. And I've always told you, the guy I want in my foxhole when you go to the Giants or the Eagles or the Redskins is that guy number 88.
Which is why I love Dez, because Dez, to me, reminds me more of Michael Irvin.
He's becoming that guy.
That's right.
Yeah.
Carmelo Anthony, who's recovering from surgery on his left knee, plans to attend a USA basketball minicamp in Las Vegas August 11th through the 13th. Stephen A., do you have a problem with your $124 million man doing this?
Yes, I do. I have a problem with it because they're not paying him $124 million. The New York Knicks are. And he has not been 100% healthy. He only played in 40 games last year. He missed 42 games. The New York Knicks are an abomination, an atrocity. We all understand that. And if they're going to make inroads towards being respectable, Carmelo Anthony needs to be 100% healthy and in position to carry this load. And if he gets hurt, a la Paul George, it's not like there's some rule in place where they get to shove aside his salary and go and add somebody, fill in that gap with somebody on their team. This team, even though I wouldn't call them cap-strapped any longer, they're in a precarious situation. They need Carmelo Anthony 100%. And if he's not available, they need to use that money to be able to get somebody else, which they're not going to be able to do, especially with Phil Jackson incapable of recruiting these days. Carmelo Anthony does not need to be playing. I don't want to see Carmelo Anthony play until it's in a Knick uniform during the regular season. How about that? Is that clear?
So what's his motivation now?
Trying to get himself in shape, get ready for the season, but he could get himself hurt.
He could. Why would any of the great players, some obviously in the Olympic year in 2012, did okay, but maybe he could be a star of this team? Okay, maybe I get that. But again, you know how I feel about my Spurs. They could have more championship rings if Ginobili and Parker hadn't played so much international off-season basketball. I don't get it.
Trying to expand their brand globally. Melo thinks like that now.
He does.
Trying to expand his brand. But you know what? Figure out another way. Damn it, be in the Knicks uniform healthy. That's the priority.
You heard him. Same time, same place tomorrow. Thank you so much for hanging with us here, and I hope you will join us again. Gentlemen, have a wonderful day. Thank you as well.
All right.
The Washington Nationals are sitting high atop the NL East standings, but the Mets are lurking right behind them. They go head-to-head this weekend. The pregame Saturday is at 6 Eastern and Sunday at 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio.